Welcome to our webinar today, How to Become a Physiotherapist in Canada, and we're specifically talking about immigration. I'm joined here today with Kyle. He's a partner at a immigration law firm, and he'll be giving us a lot of information. So hi, Kyle.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Well, yes, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, and then Kyle will take over, and we'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers kind of as we're going. So I will let everyone know, we'll do a few kind of just housekeeping checks here, but there is the option to put your questions in the question box, so please feel free to type your questions there. We will have a specific time where we will answer them, but I will go back and look at any questions that people do post. So what we're going to do is we're first going to just check to see if everyone understands just the basic functions of using this webinar. So if you can hear me okay, can you please raise your hand? You should see a little option. There we go. Lots of people raising their hand. Perfect, that's great. Okay, I'm gonna lower everyone's hands. Now, just so everyone knows, you will be muted during the entire webinar. If you have joined me in some of our webinars before, then a lot of this is totally new to you, so I apologize, but we definitely did have some new people registering, so that's why we're going over this. All right, so to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to do a bit of an introduction. We'll be kind of talking a little bit more about immigration. We'll have some Q&A, and then we will have Anita joining us from Winfield Microloans to talk about some interesting information that I think will be really applicable to everyone here. So I'm going to take a second and introduce myself. My name is Caitlin Proctor, and I'm the founder of PT Exam Prep. So we are a group of Canadian trained physios with lots of experience in prepping students from all over the world to pass the Canadian competency exams. And you'll see it throughout this presentation today, sometimes abbreviated as PCE, and PCE just means physiotherapy competency exams. So we have lots of different options to help you prepare with courses, mock exams. Yeah, so of course I'm here to answer any of those questions, but I don't have a lot of information on the immigration side of things, or the credentialing side. So that's why we have Kyle here today to kind of help us out. So where we fit into the puzzle is you need to get your credentialing done. So this just means that you're getting your school evaluated to make sure that your schooling meets the equivalency in Canada. Sometimes that may involve you having to do a few courses or a bit more practical hours, but all that is really done through the CAPR. I'm going to just make sure the slides are in here. Okay, there we go. See this now. So all of the credentialing side is done through the CAPR, and that is the Canadian Alliance of Physiotherapy Regulators. So another abbreviation that you will often see. So where we come in is we help you pass the PCE on your way to becoming a full physiotherapist in Canada. All right, so a little bit about the general pathway that we see. So, you know, based on our experience, we generally see international physios apply for permanent residency at 2 points in this process. So one, which you can see here, is when they find out that they're eligible to attempt the written PCE, okay? So those of you who don't know, you need to pass a written and practical competency exam to be a licensed physio in Canada. And that goes for anyone, even if you're Canadian trained. I myself, I went to school at UBC, did my master's in physio, and I still had to pass these tough exams. Or you can do number 2, and that's after you've completed your written or practical exams. You would then apply. So in that scenario 2, you would need to apply for a temporary visa. So whether you follow pathway 1 or pathway 2, it all depends on your comprehensive ranking score. And that's kind of what Kyle is going to talk about today and go over. So I'll do a little bit more of an introduction to Kyle. Nice photo, Kyle. It's a real good photo.
Thanks.
So you guys can, a lot of you are going to be watching this as a recording online. So you can take a pause here and take a look at all those great credentials behind them. But yeah, Kyle, take a few seconds and introduce yourself if you don't mind, and then you can take over.
Sure, thanks, Caitlin, and thanks everyone for being online today. So, as Caitlin said, my name's Kyle. I'm a lawyer in Vancouver, British Columbia. I've been doing immigration law for almost 20 years and worked with all kinds of different professionals from all over the world. And I love my job because I get to deal with people from different backgrounds and different professions. So really happy to be talking to all of you today.
Awesome.
So Kaylin mentioned that one of the things that you're going to need to do is to come into Canada to write that exam. And for many people in the world, that involves getting some kind of visa to enter Canada. Not everyone in the world needs a visa to come in temporarily, but people from probably more than half of the countries in the world need a temporary resident visa to enter Canada on a temporary basis. Even if you're just coming in as a tourist, you would need this visa, and you would need it if you're coming in to write the exam. You don't need a work permit to come in and write the exam. You don't need a study permit, but you do need to apply for the visa. If you're from a country that doesn't need visas to enter Canada, you can simply travel to Canada and then explain your purpose for entry when you arrive at the airport in Canada. So, as I said, you're applying to enter as a visitor, but you do need to disclose your reason for coming. You want to explain that you're coming to write this exam, and you'd have to meet all of the other requirements as a visitor, showing that you have enough money to support yourself when you're in Canada, evidence that you're going to return to your home country after your visit, and you're not going to work illegally while you're in Canada. So that's just really basics on visiting. I'm going to spend most of my time talking about permanent residence. And,
so Kyle, quick question about the
sure.
temporary entry visa. So I'm getting a few questions. Is that the same as a visitor's visa?
It is, and that's a good question. People talk about visitor visas sort of colloquially, but legally there's no such thing as a visitor visa. There's really only a permanent resident visa and a temporary resident visa. And temporary resident visas are for all temporary purposes, whether it's working or studying or coming in as a tourist or a business visitor or any other temporary purpose.
Okay.
So the visa is the document that allows you to come in to Canada temporarily. And then for some situations, if you're going to work or study, you would also, in addition to need the visa, you would also need a work permit or a study permit. Okay, so I'm going to talk mostly today about this thing called express entry. I'm going to spend a little while explaining what express entry is. I'm going to talk about some statistics around the express entry system. Then I'm going to talk about how to navigate it and some of the things to watch out for as you go through that process. And then we're going to do a couple of case studies, just looking at how different people might fit into that. And some of you might be able to relate your own situations to those scenarios, but I'm not going to give you advice about any individual situations. I'll try to give you some general scenarios that might sort of set you on the right path. Okay, so what is express entry? Express entry is a route to applying for permanent residence in Canada. It's an almost entirely electronic system. What that means is it's done all online. It doesn't involve any in-person interviews. It doesn't involve providing paper documents. It's done almost expressly online. It's a case management system and a selection system. So what that means is it determines who's eligible, but it also determines which applications get processed and which don't. And I'll come back to that in a bit to explain the difference between those two things. But it is a multi-stage process where there's an eligibility stage, or do you qualify to apply at all? And then there's a selection stage where they pick the best candidates and invite them to apply for permanent residence. I'll go into lots more detail about that, so don't worry about the details right now. It's a good system because it's fast if you make it through and you're selected to apply for permanent residence. For many years, applying for permanent residence in Canada was a really slow process. It took years and years. They've now got it down in most cases to less than 6 months. So it's really, really fast and efficient if you get selected. But the cost of that is the predictability. The way they make it fast is by excluding most people and not letting them apply at all. And the rules for who gets to apply the pass mark changes all the time. So there's a predictability issue. You can meet all the basic eligibility criteria, but not get an invitation to apply, depending on how many people they're inviting and who else is competing with you, because they're just picking the people who have the highest score, not necessarily the people who applied first. And I'll explain how all of that system works in a minute. But it's an important system for Canada. It's it's probably the biggest immigration program in Canada, and more than a quarter of all of our immigrants are coming through that system. Other people are coming based on family sponsorships or businesses or as refugees or humanitarian cases or lots of other things. But for sort of skilled immigrants, this is the main route into Canada. And it's probably what most of you will be looking at if you're looking to apply to come here permanently. So this is a little bit of a visual representation of how express entry works. And I said before, it's a multi-stage process. What that means is that you first need to meet some basic eligibility requirements just to be able to compete. That doesn't allow you to apply, but it allows you to say that you want to apply. So there are 3 different doors, let's say, into the express entry system. And for many of you, only one of them is going to really apply. I'll come back to what those doors are in a minute, but for now, I'll just explain that there are these 3 doors with these acronyms here. And then once you get into that pool, then certain people in there are going to get invited to apply out the other end. So you've got to meet the eligibility requirements to get in the door, and then you've got to get invited to apply out of that pool, invited to apply for permanent residence. So multi-step process. And the way they select who gets invited to apply is based on your score. And we'll talk about how they score people in a minute. So how do we get into the pool? And there are 3 different ways into the pool. I'm not going to talk about these in the order that they're here. I'm going to talk about them from least relevant to most relevant. The Federal Skilled Trades program is a tiny program that very few people use. It's designed for the regulated trades like electricians, plumbers, carpenters, people like that. It's not going to apply to most of you, and only about 1% of express entry candidates are coming through the Federal Skilled Trades. So it's pretty insignificant. The next one might apply to some of you, but probably not most of you yet. And that's the Canadian Experience class. So this is for people who have 1 year of a full-time skilled work experience in Canada and meet language requirements. And for that, it's the Canadian Language Benchmark 7, which I think is the same requirement that you have for the PT registration, if I'm not mistaken. So most of you are probably going to meet that anyway if you're getting through the licensing process.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that is the language proficiency requirement.
Right. And then the next one, which is the one that's going to apply to most of you, is the federal skilled workers. And just to make things really complicated, separate from the express entry points system, the federal skilled workers, which is the last door into express entry, has its own points grid, which is totally different. It's out of 100 points. You have to get 67 points out of 100. And you have to have at least 1 year of full-time high-skill work experience somewhere in the world, doesn't matter where, in the last 10 years and meet settlement funds requirements. And their points grid is based on age, education, work experience, language ability, arranged employment, and a couple of other adaptability factors. And the 67 points for many highly educated people is not the main barrier. A lot of you are going to be able to meet that 67 points and are going to meet the basic eligibility requirements to get in the door to express entry. But that's, if you recall the previous slide with the diagram, that's just the way into the program. That doesn't give you an invitation to apply yet. Federal skilled trades we already talked about, and as I said, it's probably not going to apply to most of you, so I won't spend too much time on that one. All right, so you've met the requirements for one of those 3 programs. and you've got yourself into the express entry pool. Oh, it's just not advancing yet. Hang on a sec. Oh, there we go. Went too far. Okay, got it. So now you're in the express entry pool. So what happens if you met that basic eligibility requirement to get into the pool? You create an online profile in the express entry system. And if any of you have ever done online dating, this is the immigration version of that. You say, hey, my name is Kyle. I have a degree in physiotherapy and I scored Canadian language benchmark 7 on my IELTS test, and I have a year of work experience, and I have a sister in Canada. You put all of your qualifications in there, and it spits out a score. And that score is based on all these different factors. And you enter the pool with thousands and thousands of other candidates. And you don't know who else is in the pool, and you don't know what the average score is, and you don't know what everybody else's scores are. You don't know where you rank in the pool. You're just given a score with no other information about about who you're competing with. But there are always thousands of people in the system at any given time. And this profile is just information. You're not providing any documents at this point. There's no interview. You're not proving anything. You're just saying, this is who I am, and these are my qualifications. Of course, you're going to have to prove it at a later stage if you get invited to apply. But at this stage, you just declare the information. Obviously, it's important that it be accurate because it's going to have to match with the information that you prove later on, but you don't have to prove it now. There's a job match service that's part of the system that you can use to match up with Canadian potential employers. I haven't found it that useful, but it's part of the system anyway.
And that's definitely something, sorry to jump in, that, you know, we are more than happy to help. We get that question a lot from students is, you know, if we know of places that are hiring across Canada, and we have lots of contacts with clinics all across Canada. So if that, you know, is a bit of a lag in trying to find a position, as long as people are skilled and fluent in English or French, definitely reach out to us and we can help you with that category at least.
Definitely, and we'll talk about arranged employment in a little bit. That can be a big boost for your application, so that could be really helpful. Thank you. So let's move on a bit. Okay, so when I'm talking about CRS points, I'm talking about the points in express entry. CRS just stands for the Comprehensive Ranking System, which is the system that they use to allocate points in express entry. But really, it just means the express entry points. So how do they get those points? Age is a big one. Language score is a big one, and that's English or French or both. Education, of course. Work experience. Canadian work and education is a separate factor. Arranged employment, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a bit, but it's not enough just to have a job offer. It's a job offer that has to be vetted and approved by the Canadian government, and then a couple of other factors like having a sibling in Canada and some provincial approvals and some other factors, but those are the main ones right there. So you're ranked based on these things, and every couple of weeks, the government issues a new pass mark. So they'll say, okay, today the pass mark is 460 points. It's a 1,200 point scale. Everybody who's in the pool at that moment, who's got 460 points or more, is invited to apply for permanent residence. Everybody who's below 460 points that day isn't invited, but you just stay in the pool and you wait for the next round. And if you are invited to apply, you then have 60 days in which to file your actual application for permanent residence. If you don't file it in time, you can lose your invitation and you go back into the pool.
Is there a current trend in what that number is set at? Like, is it normally, you know, 420, 480?
There is, and I'm going to talk about some stats in a minute about where that's fluctuated. But yes, we have a general idea of the range of fluctuation. It's, you can never predict exactly what it's going to be, but we have a pretty good idea of the maximum and minimum, and I'll show you some numbers on that in just a minute. Yeah, it's happening pretty frequently. So if your score is really high, the invitations are happening every 2 weeks. You're probably going to get an invitation within a week or two. If your score is really low, you might never get an invitation. And if your score is in between, then you might have to wait a little while till the score fluctuates and comes to your pass mark, to your score, I mean. So the actual application, we call the e-application because it's an electronic application. This is where you actually prove all the things that you claimed in your profile. So you are uploading information, a lot of detailed information about your background, your work history, your address history, your education, your other information about your criminal record, all the criminal background, all these different things. You provide a lot of detail, including about your family, and you provide documents to prove some of those elements. But again, it's electronic, so you're just uploading scans of these documents. You don't have to provide original documents because it's all done virtually. And you're not dealing with a real human at this point. Everything's just done through a computer system. They can request original documents, but they very rarely do. Until recently, they almost never did. Now they occasionally, as part of a quality assurance process, will just pick people at random and ask for original documents to make sure that they're actually getting the real thing, but it's pretty rare. They almost never interview you, except at the very last step of the process. You'll meet with an officer to complete the process, but during the process and the assessment, you're not meeting with a real person at any point, except in very rare circumstances. One of the first things that happens when you file your application online is it doesn't go to a real officer who's assessing your application. It goes to a clerk whose only job is to see if your application is complete. And they're not necessarily trained in immigration. They just have a checklist. If anything is incomplete, if you've forgotten to fill out one box or check one box on one of the 12 forms you have to file, or you've missed one page of one document to upload, or something didn't upload properly because of a technical issue, your whole application is returned unprocessed, as if it never happened. So it's really, really important to triple check the completeness of every last form and document that you're uploading. They're absolutely ruthless about this. Not that many applications get refused, but a very large number of applications get bounced for incompleteness. That's where most people run into trouble. But if you make it past that completeness check, for the most part, as long as you've proven everything that you claimed in your profile, most applications are processed really quickly and usually in under 6 months. So it's a pretty good system if you can make it through the initial hurdle.
some loopholes, and then you get the glory.
That's right. Yeah. It works pretty well most of the time. Let's see. Okay. So if you're not getting picked, if the score is not coming to where you are, what can you do to change your points? There are a few things that are in your control and some things that are not. The things that you can do something about, the biggest one is the language scores. Now, you're already going to probably be scoring at least at a Canadian language benchmark 7, but you can pick up a few more points for scoring even more highly. So if you're not getting the points you need, but you're close, try writing your test again and see if you score more highly. There are only 4 tests that they will accept, 2 for English and 2 for French. You can do the IELTS, which is I think a British test. You have to do the general and not the academic test. There's the CELPIP, which is a Canadian test for English, but the IELTS and the CELPIP are very similar. They test all the same things, and the methodology is very slightly different. I've had some clients tell me that they preferred the CELPIP, but they're basically the same test. And then the TEF and the TCF for French, again, very similar tests, and they're the only ones that are accepted for French.
I'm getting a few people asking about the TOEFL test. Can you speak to that one?
Sure. So TOEFL is used for all kinds of purposes, but it's not accepted for immigration because it doesn't quite test all of the same factors in the same way. So they're looking at speaking, listening, writing, and reading, and there's a certain sort of scope of material that all of those tests are covering, and the TOEFL hasn't been accepted for this purpose, unfortunately.
Okay.
So the next thing, an ECA here refers to an educational credential assessment. Now, Most of you are going to be doing this as part of your licensing process. However, to get an ECA that's accepted by immigration, you have to go through one of the approved agencies. And my understanding is that the agency that does this for the credentialing in Canada is not one of the approved immigration credentialing agencies. So unfortunately, you may have to go through this process twice, once for the licensing and once for immigration with different agencies. All of the immigration approved agencies, the way they do it is that you create a profile with the agency, and then you contact your university and have them send the transcripts directly to the agency, not through you. That way the agency can verify the source of the information, and they provide a credential assessment. And what that means is they're looking at your foreign training and giving an assessment of what it would be equivalent to in Canada. So if you've done a master's outside of Canada, they'll look at your master's and see, is that equivalent to a Canadian master's? And if it is, then that's what you'll get the points for in Express Entry, not how it's treated by the university outside of Canada, but how it would have been treated by a university in Canada. So if you haven't already done that as part of the process, and you probably have to anyway, just to get in the door to Express Entry through the federal skilled worker category, you probably need those points anyway. But if you haven't, get the ECA and you'll get some extra education points for that. Arranged employment, we talked a little bit about before. It's a bit of a process to get arranged employment. If you're already working in Canada, for example, if you've done studies in Canada and you get a post-graduation work permit or something like that, then it can be a little bit easier to get those arranged employment points. But if you're outside of Canada, which I think many of you are, then getting those arranged employment points requires that you have a job offer from an employer that's willing to go through this process called the Labor Market Impact Assessment, the LMIA. And it's a pretty torturous process. It's a fairly big commitment for the employer, but if you're in demand and the employer is motivated, they may be willing to go through this process. Takes at least a few months and it costs them a bunch of money and a bit of administrative work. But if it's successful, you can pick up an extra 50 points that you can add to your Express Entry profile, and that can push you over the edge in some cases. And then the last one is getting a provincial nomination. So each of the provinces in Canada and territories has its own immigration system, and some of those immigration programs sync up with the Express Entry system. Not all of them do, but some of them do. And if you can get a provincial nomination in one of these programs that matches with Express Entry, that can give you an extra 600 points in your Express Entry profile and pretty much guarantees that you'll get an invitation. So every province has a slightly different way of doing this. So I've just shown the example of the BC, the British Columbia program. The way it works is you create a profile in Express Entry by qualifying in one of those 3 entry doors, just like normal. But if your score is too low, you can make a detour to the BC Provincial Nominee program, go through their program, and their program is also another points-based system, and it's also employer supported. So you need an employer to support you and go through this program with you. And you make a joint application between you and the employer. And if you're successful there, then that automatically gets added back into your federal Express Entry profile, and you automatically get an extra 600 points, and then you're guaranteed to get an invitation. So that's just the example of British Columbia. Every province is slightly different. There are even some provinces that will proactively go into the Express Entry pool and look for candidates who've indicated that they want to move to that province and invite you to apply without you even asking. So as I said, every province is different. Have a look at where you are interested in moving and see what their requirements are. So now let's look at some statistics. So Canada admits about 300,000 immigrants a year, immigrants and refugees. Of those, we're expecting about 90,000 invitations to be issued in 2019. Now, not all of those are going to file an application, and of those, not all are going to be approved, but most will. And many of those will have accompanying family with them. So this represents a pretty big chunk of the Canadian immigration program. The lowest pass mark that's ever happened in Express Entry was 199 points, but that was limited to the federal skilled trades category, that tiny category that nobody uses. So that 199 pass mark is not real for most people. The lowest real pass mark that applied to everybody was 413, and that happened a couple of years ago and never since. So don't bank on that happening again. The highest pass mark ever was 886. That was clearly targeted at people with provincial nominations because nobody else could score that high. Most of the pass marks have been around 450 to 460. There have been some as low as 440 and some as high as 480, but that's the general range. If you do an assessment or you create a profile and you're somewhere in the 440 to 450, 460 range, you're probably within a range that could get an invitation. Below 440, you're probably not going to get an invitation. Above 460, you're almost certain to get an invitation very, very quickly. And the sort of 440 or 450 to 60 is the range where you might have to wait a little while and see what happens. So now I'm going to talk about some of the ways to navigate the system, because as I said before, it's a pretty technical process, and there are lots of places you can mess up and have your application returned or refused. As I said, having it returned is one of the biggest issues, but there are also some technical problems that can trip people up. One of the things to look at is admissibility. And what that means is not only do you have to be eligible for the program and get invited, but you also have to be admissible to Canada for medical, criminal, security, misrepresentation, all of those sorts of things, because you can meet all the requirements and get an invitation to apply. But if you have a serious criminal record or a serious health issue, you can still be refused on those bases. So if you have any questions about those things, get legal advice before you spend a bunch of effort and time and money on the express entry process, because it could stop your process in its tracks right from the beginning. That doesn't mean necessarily, I mean, there are some health issues or criminal records that you can overcome. It just means that you want to get advice about that before you invest anything in it. And check your eligibility and do a points assessment before you try to create a profile. People can end up doing a lot of work, collecting documents and things, and then realize they're not actually eligible. There's a pretty good self-assessment tool on the IRCC government website. I recommend using that one. Don't use any of the ones that you find on some consultant's website because they may be out of date or whatever. Use the official one because it's going to be the most legally accurate, and it's updated as the law changes and things like that. So do a self-assessment or get legal advice and get a lawyer to do an assessment for you and let you know whether you're on the right track. Okay. More strategies. So timing is really important, and it's important for a couple of different reasons. I recommend that you don't actually create a profile until you're in a position to be ready to file an application. Now, why does that matter? It matters because if you get an invitation, you only have 60 days to file your application or you're going to lose your invitation. And there are lots of things that can take a long time to get. You're going to need to get police clearances from every country and state you've lived in. You're going to have to get educational credential assessments. You're going to have to do your language tests. You're going to have to get a medical examination. You're going to have to get employment experience letters from previous and current employers, all kinds of records. You're going to have to get documents translated in some cases. Those can take a long time, and sometimes they're going to take more than the 60 days you have. And so I recommend doing all of that. If you've done a self-assessment and you think you're in the right range and you think you're eligible, then get all of these things, then create your profile, then you're ready to go. And if you get the invitation, you're not going to waste any time. The other thing is, because you've got to get all these different things and they take a while to get, watch out for expiring documents. For example, your language tests expire after, I think, 2 years for immigration purposes. Police clearances can expire after 6 months in some cases if you're still in a place. So there are lots of things that you need to make sure that are current at the time you apply. And so just keep track of all of those things. Next thing is about your work experience, because work experience is one of the things they're going to be assessing, and it's a really important factor. You're going to need to prove that by giving detailed letters from previous employers. Don't just ask your previous employers for a reference letter and take whatever they give you. There have to be specific elements in those letters, and it's all in the immigration guides online, or a lawyer can help you with this. But make sure that your previous employers and current employer, if you have one, have clear instructions on what they need to include in those letters, and even better, give them a template and let them fill in the blanks. You don't want to be telling them what to say, but you do want to tell them the format that you wanted and the kind of information that you need in it.
I don't know how helpful this is, but we sometimes do get students who ask us to write letters. And
Okay.
what I find very helpful, not for this, but just, whether it just be for an application for a scholarship or whatnot. And I do find it really helpful when the student kind of lays everything out exactly like you said, right? Like this needs to be talked on, this needs to be talked on, this needs to be included. And I've even gone so far to, I really like when sometimes people even write the letter and they give it to me and they say, feel free to change anything that you like. I just want to try to minimize the work, as much work for you as possible. So.
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's great. And as long as you're really confident about all the information being accurate, and you give the employer the opportunity to carefully review it and verify all the information, then writing the letter yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. And then they can put it on letterhead and verify it and sign it. You just don't want to be putting words in their mouths and like maybe getting a date wrong and they don't verify it carefully or something like that. You want to make sure that that information is verified by the employer. But absolutely, if you've got everything and you're sure about it, drafting
make it as easy for them as possible.
Exactly. The other thing though is make sure that the letter that they give you is consistent with all the other information that's going to go into the application, including the forms, your resume, but also the publicly available information like your LinkedIn profile. I've heard horror stories of officers going online and just on their own checking someone's LinkedIn profile and saying, hey, there's this whole job that this person never disclosed that shows up on their LinkedIn profile, but it's not anywhere in their application. Are they hiding something? I'm going to refuse their application. So make sure that everything is consistent and complete and obviously accurate. The other thing is, go back to that profile where you listed your work experience, make sure that that is completely consistent with everything that you're putting into your actual application. Because if there's anything inconsistent in there, even the date that you started a job or something like that, they're going to assume that one of those is wrong and it might be a misrepresentation, maybe even a deliberate misrepresentation, and they could even just refuse your application for misrepresentation. So it's really important that the profile itself and the application be consistent. So when I said before, they're not verifying anything at the profile stage, that's true, but they are verifying it later on and they're cross-checking it with the profile. So even though you don't have to prove it at the profile stage, you do very much need to make sure it's accurate. So now I'm going to just run through a couple of fact patterns, and some of you might see some things that look familiar. I don't want to be giving any one sort of specific legal advice, even if these happen to match up exactly with your situation. It's not a substitute for doing the research and getting advice, but this will just give you a general idea about how express entry works. And sometimes it's not exactly how you would expect. So in the first scenario, candidate one is very, very highly qualified. She has a ton of experience. She's very highly educated. So she's 45 years old. She's got 20 years of experience. She hasn't worked in Canada, but she's got a master's degree from outside of Canada. She's got relatives in Canada. Her CRS score is pretty terrible. It's 275 points, and the pass mark, the lowest we've ever seen, is well into the 400s. So she's never going to get invited to apply at that score unless she can do something else to improve her score. Whereas candidate two, who has very little experience, only 1 year of work experience, is pretty fresh out of school, but studied in Canada and has a year of work experience in Canada and has that arranged employment with a Canadian employer, he's scoring really highly, even though he has way less experience. So how you score an express entry is not necessarily a good reflection of your sort of professional qualifications. So don't take it personally. It's just the way the CRS points have been designed, and they're not necessarily getting the best candidates. They've decided on these criteria for all kinds of different reasons that are sometimes a bit of a mystery, but that's how it works. So we'll look at another scenario, a couple of candidates here. So candidate one, she's 30 years old. She has 5 years of experience outside of Canada. She hasn't worked in Canada, but she's got a master's degree as well. No arranged employment in Canada. Again, scoring really, really low, even though she's got great experience and great education, and her age is sort of at the peak of points. she's still scoring really low. Candidate 2, and this one's a bit of a trick here, he's scoring 368 based on having studied in Canada, but he doesn't have that 1 year of work experience anywhere. So it doesn't matter what his score is because he's not even eligible to get in the door to create a profile in Express Entry. He doesn't have that 1 year of work experience either for the Canadian experience class if it's in Canada or federal skilled worker category if it's anywhere in the world. So he's not even allowed to play the game. And it is, these two scenarios, I realize they're both people who have some work or study in Canada. It is possible to qualify with no work or study in Canada if you score really highly on other things. I've run a bunch of different scenarios offline that I didn't put into this presentation, but if you've got, like if you're in your 20s, you've got a master's degree, you've got 3 years of work experience and you score highly on IELTS or the CELPIP or one of the French tests, you can easily score in the high 400s and be qualified for an invitation even without arranged employment in Canada. So it's very much possible to do. The language test is a big one and the age is a big one. You start losing points in your 30s and by your mid 40s, you lose all your age points. They really discriminate against us old folks. So those are big ones, but you can make up those points in other places. It's not the end of the story if you lost all your age points, but you've got to do really well on other things. So that's sort of the end of my formal presentation. Caitlin said I'm happy to take some questions, and I think she's going to sort of curate those for me. And I just wanted to remind everyone that I'm not going to give you advice about your own situation, but I'm happy to answer any general questions about how the process works, or even other things about Canadian immigration. I won't necessarily have all the answers, but I'll do my best to answer your questions. And maybe Caitlin, I'll turn that over to you to.
Yeah, I'm good to go. Okay, so I'm going to kind of start at the top because people have been putting in their questions, and I think some of these you kind of answered as we went through. But one of the questions we're getting: does Express Entry pretty much mean your CRS score? Like, if you get it, it's completely just based off that score?
Yeah. So if the score that is created in the Express Entry system, once you've created your profile, that's the one that your invitation is going to be based on. And as long as you can prove all the things that were in your profile, your application is going to be approved, unless you have an admissibility issue. There's really no reason for them to refuse an application as long as you can prove everything that is the basis for those points. So yes, the points are basically the determination. If you get the invitation, you're off to the races.
Okay. We're getting another question from Shuta asking, can we kind of explain what I guess in the physiotherapy world would be considered a highly skilled work experience? So we often see people are, either physios or potentially they're even physiotherapy assistants.
Right. So that's a really good question. So skilled work experience in this context has a very specific legal meaning, and it's referring to something called the National Occupational Classification. And this is a Government of Canada database that classifies every job known to humanity, gives it a 4-digit serial number, and then gives it a skill level. And the skill levels are D, C, B, A, and 0. For whatever reason, that one didn't get a letter. So 0 are like senior executive positions, CEOs and things like that. A-level positions are positions that usually require a university education, and physios are an A-level position. B-level positions are usually positions that require some kind of formal post-secondary, usually a college education, but not necessarily a full degree. And then the C and D occupations are usually the semi-skill and low-skill positions. So physios are an A-level position, totally considered a skilled position. 0, A, and B are all considered high skill positions. The C and D ones are considered the low skill positions. So I would think that, I haven't looked up physio assistants, but my impression, and I don't know this world as well as you do, but my impression is that those are probably going to be a B skill level, so still considered a high skill position, because I believe that they require some level of post-secondary education. Caitlin, you can tell me if I'm wrong here.
No, yeah, I think that the schooling definitely does differ, but Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, so I'm getting a question from Erica, and she's asking that she already has an existing profile and is part of the pool. However, she is below the cutoff score. So is she still able to proceed to sit the PCE exam, the licensing exam?
So I would imagine that the two processes are more or less independent. There's nothing that prevents you, I would think, from an immigration point of view, there's nothing that prevents you from writing that exam. If you're able to enter Canada on a temporary basis, you can write that exam even before creating a profile, or while you've got an active profile, or even after filing an application. They're more or less independent. But yeah, so I don't think there's any barrier there.
Awesome. And so in a situation like that, they would just have to apply for that temporary visitor visa.
That's right.
Okay, awesome. The next question is from Carla, and she's asking, is there a fee that needs to be settled when you're creating the profile, or does the fee get paid at a different time?
Great question. So the great thing about one of the good things about Express Entry is that there's very little barrier to entry at the beginning other than meeting the entry criteria. You don't have to prove anything, and you also don't have to pay anything. So the profile is free to create. You can probably create it in a couple of hours online, just entering information, as long as you've got all your information handy. And as long as you meet those entry criteria, you could do that anytime. As I said, there's some reasons you might want to not create it right away, because you don't want to lose an invitation if you get one because you don't have your other documents, but there's really nothing else that prevents you from just creating a profile. It's pretty low risk enterprise as long as everything's accurate. You do pay an application fee. If you get an invitation to apply and you file your online application, at that point you pay an application fee. And then if the application is approved, you also pay a right of permanent residence fee. And those fees together come up to about $1,000 Canadian.
Awesome. Miguel is asking, are you able to request an extension if some of your documents aren't available?
No. Short answer is no.
Okay.
However, if you can't get all your documents in time, you can decline an invitation and wait for the next one. That's fine if your score is really high. But if your score is really marginal and you got lucky and you got an invitation just squeaked in under the wire, then it can be a big risk to turn down an invitation because you might not get another one. So that's why it's a good idea to have all your documents ready to go before you create the profile, because if you do just squeak in on a lucky low pass mark, you don't want to give up that invitation.
Yeah, okay. Imelda, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, is asking, is there any way to increase your points through the Express Entry program if you are enrolling in a study program in Canada? So I love this question because I feel like we do get this. And people say, if we join PG Exam Prep, does it help my chances, right?
It can in some situations. If you complete at least a one-year diploma program in Canada at a recognized institution, then that can give you some extra points for Canadian education. And it can also open some other doors to work permits and things like that. But doing a short course in Canada, well, it's probably good for your career and good for all kinds of other things. It doesn't give you any extra points for Express Entry.
Okay. We're gonna do two more questions. I'm gonna see if I can answer this question, and Kyle, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So
Sure.
Carla is asking, so first we need to be licensed or do we need to be licensed in Canada before we apply for express entry? And so my understanding from everything that you've taught us today is that no, the license is completely separate from your express entry. Your express entry is accumulation of these different scores and all those points that you've shown. So that can be done at any time, regardless of when you're doing your licensing exam.
Yeah, that's right. They are more or less separate. They're really assessing your past education and past work experience, and looking at whether you were qualified to do the job that you've already done as opposed to qualifying for the job that you want to do in Canada. But obviously you want to get licensed because you want to be able to work as soon as you're here. But it's not totally necessary to do that as part of the immigration process.
Okay, awesome. And so last question is from Miguel, and I think it's a nice one to end it with. So he's wondering about the processing fees and what that is in totality. And I think you kind of talked about it a little bit, but I think this also might be a nice point to talk about, you know, where you come in this process too. If people want to reach out to you,
Sure.
you know, what does that look like?
Sure. So yeah, so the government fees, you know, as I said, there's a fee that you have to pay if you get invited to apply, and that's $550 for the principal applicant. And then there's some fees for accompanying dependents if you have any family coming with you, and you can include a spouse or common law partner and children up to their 22nd birthday. They can be included in your application. Kids who are older than that are on their own, unfortunately. So there's a fee for each family member, and then if the application is approved, for the adult applicants, they also have to pay a $490 right of permanent residence fee, just for the privilege of actually having your application approved. If you apply for a temporary resident visa to come in to write the exam, for example, then there's also a fee for that, which I think is $150. So there are a number of government fees throughout the process. And then, of course, if you do hire a professional to help you with the process, they're going to charge you a fee as well, and make sure that you talk about that up front if you're going to engage someone. So yeah, I can talk a little bit about how I or another lawyer fits into this process. The process is designed so that people can do it themselves. There's no magic to it. We don't have any secret backdoors to the process. We don't have any secret information. What a lawyer can add to the process is, having been through the process many times before, we know the kinds of things that people usually get tripped up on. And there are a lot of things that are not obvious in the process, that aren't explained on the website very well, that you just kind of learn by trial and error. And so we can't make the process go faster, but we can help it not go slower by avoiding a lot of those pitfalls that people frequently fall into. We can reduce the chances of your application being bounced for incompleteness, things like that. And so that's where a lawyer can really add value. And also just in assessing your strategy at the outset, and giving you a plan and giving you a clear idea of what's going to work and what's not going to work, how long things are going to take, and helping you deal with issues that come up through the process. And most lawyers will handle the whole thing for you. You know, there's actually lawyers have their own sort of electronic interface with the Express Entry system. So if you engage someone to do the application for you, we can log in our own profile, our own portal, and provide all your information for you through that, and manage the whole process for you to try and make it as painless as possible for you. As I said, there's no magic to it. It's like doing your income taxes. You can do it yourself, but it's a pain in the neck.
Which physios help with, so
right.
Well, awesome, Kyle. Thank you so much. Kyle is going to check out now, and we're going to go over and talk to Anita, but we are going to be sending you a webinar follow-up or takeaway email, as we always do. So we'll put some of the key information in that email. This will also be a recording that we are going to put on YouTube, so you will be able to watch it again and again if you want to. And we will put Kyle's information in there. Please note that Kyle is a professional. He's a lawyer. He's been so grateful to give us all of his time. So understand that there is a fee for his service if you do want to reach out and talk to him. So please be mindful of that. But otherwise, thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for listening today.
Yeah, awesome. All right, bye.
Bye.
Well, that was great. We really learned a lot there. I learned a lot there too. So yeah, thank you, Kyle. Next up, we're going to be talking to Anita Lull, and she is from Windmill Microlending. This probably will only take about 5 or 10 minutes, so stick with it a little bit. This is a pretty cool conversation to have here. So I am just going to bring Anita on. All righty. Anita, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Hi, Caitlin. Hi, everybody.
Hi. So yeah, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, and you can get right into it if you like.
Okay, so do I have control of this now then?
Yes, you do.
All right. Just make sure it's working. Perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Anita Lau. I work for Windmill Microlending. I've been with the organization for about 6 or 7 months. They themselves have been around since 2005. I'm the community relations specialist, so my job is to kind of go out there and create some awareness about our program and make sure that it's out there for anybody who can use it. As it states on the screen, it's a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit organization, a charity. We're funded by provincial and federal support, and what we do is we provide low interest microloans to skilled immigrants in order to help them pay for licensing or training needed to start their careers in Canada. So when we talk about, in this example, doing exam prep, and the costs associated with that, you can take out a microloan with very low interest rates to help pay for that. A little about us, or about what we do. We give up to $15,000 in a loan for you to help get your credentials. It's very low barrier and easy access. Our point is, or our main goal is to try to support you in any way once you're here to be able to, you know, start working and start living that Canadian dream. Once you come here, you will realize that at times there are a lot of barriers in place when it comes down to getting loans from banks. So there's a difference between us and a bank. There are quite a few differences. Because we do not get funded through the banks, we actually have the money in-house. So if you go through a Canadian bank, at times they'll look for your credit history or your credit score. Being new to the country, you may not have one. Or if you've been here for a while, yet you've been underemployed, you might have a bad score. They may look for you to already have stable employment, have an income, and be able to secure a loan with assets or a co-signer. When it comes down to us, we don't look at your credit or your credit history. You can be unemployed or underemployed. You can be living off savings, be on some sort of government support, credit cards, any one of those situations, and have no assets to secure a loan. But, so even though we have a very low barrier way for you to access it, our program is actually really structured to work with our clients. We are very character-based. We look at the experience you're coming in with. We look at what you're looking to do and the chances of you being able to get a job afterwards. That's really what we're basing our eligibility for this on. The money, once you get it, you can also use it for a number of things. You can use it for education and training programs for up to 2 years or less, or also with this, the PT exam prep courses. Yes, you can use it for fees for licensing and qualifying exams, travel expenses to take courses or exams if they're not available in your area, books, supplies, course materials. And if there's other things, once again, there's a lot of flexibility in the program. If you have gaps in your living allowance, in your budget, once you come here, you might need childcare, daycare costs, anything like that. Speak with your career counselor at Windmill, and it's usually pretty flexible, and we try to help you out in any possible way. A lot of the people that work or come through us, as you can see on the left-hand side here, 51% are taking out loans to get back into the health sector. The finance, engineering, education, law, management, other. As long as you have these skills or this experience coming in with you, the field is not important. And you don't have to go into the same profession, right? You could have been, say you could have been a doctor back home, and now you come in here and you want to become, you don't want to be that, you want to be like a physician's assistant because you don't want to go through all that. That's fine, as long as it's within the same field. We are available from coast to coast in all provinces and territories, well, almost all provinces. We're just waiting for our papers in Quebec. We have our office that's ready to open. So you can come and you can be anywhere in Canada and access these loans. To be eligible, you need to be born and trained outside of Canada, but hold status as a permanent resident here in Canada. You can be a provincial nominee, you can be a Canadian citizen, or a protected person. Now, Canadian citizen meaning you could have been here for 5 years, working in some other profession, and then decided now that you're a little bit more stable, or now that it's the right time for you to go back and kind of go back into the career you were in before. Like it says, you plan to return to a professional field or a related field in which you have experience outside of Canada. These funds cannot be used for getting starting training or getting trained, in a new field or starting a new business. And if you are a convention refugee or a protected person, you can actually get these loans at a 0% interest. Another actually interesting thing about our loans versus a bank loan is when we say they're very low interest. If you're a skilled immigrant that's here, and say you've taken out $10,000 for a 2-year program, for that time you're actually doing your learning plan for those 2 years, you will only be paying back your interest. So on a 2-year program, $10,000, our interest rate is 5.45%, which is very low. And so you'll be paying back $54 on a monthly basis, and that'll go toward your interest. And once you've finished your learning plan, you have 90 days, and then you'll start making payments back on your principal and your interest. If you are a refugee, you pay a very minimum payment in that 2 years. I think it's like $10 or $15 a month, and that money goes directly toward your principal since it's 0% interest. And then once after the 90 days, and then you start paying back the rest of your principal. So that's actually pretty significant. That's not a program that's available to, or that anybody else offers in Canada.
Yeah,
it is. The process is also very simple. It's online. So what you would do is you would go online. There's a quick eligibility quiz, and that can be found at windmillmicrolending.org. It takes like 30 seconds. There's 5 questions or something like that. After that, you go in and you do an online application. There, they will tell you, there's the facts page will tell you all the documents that you need. The application takes 30 to 60 minutes, after which you will get an email to do a quick survey. Now, this survey is just to kind of see what sort of places we can support you in when it comes down to employment afterwards, right? So where your weaknesses are. It doesn't affect your application at all. So answer as honestly as you can, because what we'll get back are just scores, and those scores will tell us what community resources we can give you to help you find a job once you are done your schooling. After that, what happens is that we contact you to set up a Skype interview. If you are anywhere in Calgary, Edmonton, or Toronto, you can actually go into the office and have an interview, or else it's a 1-hour Skype interview with our counselors who will go over your application. It's more of they'll ask you questions about your background, understand what your story is, what your journey is, what you're looking to do, go over your application, your budgets, and then they'll write a report and you'll get an answer within a few days. It's a very efficient process. You can get an answer back or have the loan approved and in your bank within 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty quick, and that's a great thing about it being a small organization, but also just for everything being in-house, the approval process and everything. And
sorry, you go. No, you go.
No, go ahead.
I think it's really important for everyone that's here to reiterate that you guys are a not-for-profit, right? This is, you're doing it for the purpose of, helping everyone. So it's really nice to know that there are people like you guys out there that are willing to help. And one of the questions that I'm getting is, for all that you were talking about with the eligibility quiz, is there a cost associated with that?
To write the eligibility quiz?
To then talk to someone?
No, there's no cost, none at all. There's no processing fees. Once you go through the application, once you've gone in and you've been approved, it's very clear and very transparent. You will only be paying back your loan and interest if you're an immigrant, no interest if you're a refugee. There's no fees, no nothing associated.
Awesome.
Yeah. And this program itself, it's I know different countries have different concepts of credit, of lending and all that. And some people, you know, find that they have a lot of biases around it. And if there's any questions, please feel free to give a call on the toll-free number or drop them an email. They're very easy to access and very happy to answer any questions. The system also, like we have a great success rate. We have 97.5% of the people who borrow money from us pay us back, which is huge. And we approve close to 98% of the loans that come through.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good ratio.
It is. It's a beautiful report card, but honestly, it is really focused on just helping newcomers, refugees, immigrants that have a skill, and once they get here to be able to work.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a good segue a little bit. I don't know if you have a few minutes to explain, you know, how did Windmill start?
It's a crazy story, actually. Back in
I know, that's why I asked.
Okay. It's actually a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Back in 2005, there was a psychologist who worked out at the University of Calgary hospital, and she noticed that a lot of the janitorial staff were these women who were actually trained, had medical training, right, had all the skills and stuff, but they just didn't have the credentials here to work. So then they were doing these survival jobs of being janitors, which is great, except that's not what they were trained to do. And so she and a few of her friends, and most of her friends they were all women, and most of them were immigrant women, successful career women out in Calgary, started giving out small loans to these ladies for them to get their credentials. So then they can actually get better jobs and, you know, support their family and, you know, live a happier life.
Yeah.
And so that just kind of grew from there. Then they realized that there was all this need. And so they started bringing on the community and kind of getting more funds, and it's actually just grown from there. And so it slowly moved out east into Toronto, where it blew up because there's a huge immigrant and refugee community there. And then we got funding federally from the government as well as provincially. And we have a lot of private donors who actually have everybody here almost is an immigrant or has an immigrant story, but a lot of newer immigrants who have come here, settled, and been successful, and part of their philanthropy give to our organization.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that story.
Well, thanks for asking.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, well, I think that's pretty much all we have. I'm not getting too many questions. I'm just going to take a look at the box and see if there's anything coming in.
I really encourage everyone who is interested in this to really check out our website. There's a lot of information on there. A lot of frequently asked questions has like the steps in more detail about the application and what it looks like.
So I am getting a question from someone that is saying if they wanted to apply for funding, but they don't necessarily have a plan yet as to what they need to do or what schooling and stuff they need to have or how they would use the money. Is that okay to still apply, or should they wait until they have a plan?
No, you need to come in with a plan, because that's what they're going to look at.
Yeah, fair, hey?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Do you have experience with working with students who were physiotherapists and are making the transition to come to Canada?
I personally do not, but our organization, so the career coaches who they'll be talking to, most likely will.
Awesome. All right, that's good. I think that's all the question. Oh, one more. How much is the interest rate and how is it kind of computed?
So the interest rate, it's your prime plus 1.5, which works out to about 5.45%.
Okay.
And it is not compounded, if I remember correctly. So it'll be based on the amount that you've taken out.
Okay.
And so over the, hold on, I don't have, and then so over, it depends. So if you're taking this loan out and what you're doing is you're doing a 1-year plan. Once you're finished your 1-year schooling, after 90 days, then you'll have, generally they put it up to about 2 years, but there's a lot of flexibility.
Right. It seems like it's kind of a case by case basis too, right?
It is. So once you've kind of, and when you have your 1 hour or when you have your interview with your career coach, they will go over that, what the repayment looks like and how much interest you'll end up paying, and the flexibility and what the payments would look like.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Anita. That was awesome.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Really excited to be able to share that information with so many of you. So perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And again, we will be uploading this onto YouTube soon. We'll be sending you a webinar takeaway email fairly shortly as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.